Hi, everybody. Welcome to Countering Disinformation. My name is Sally Bicella, and it's so great to see some of those friendly faces out there. We haven't had an event since November. Hi. I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this tonight, for me anyway. I actually watched the Netflix Social Dilemma. I don't know if any of you have seen that yet. If you haven't, I definitely recommend you watch it. So I've been getting involved with the Center for Humane Technology, and then I came across Building Bridges for America and our presenter tonight, Kaz Margino, and I saw her presentation and I thought, wow, we need this. A couple of things that I've learned in this is, and Kaz will talk about this, is about empathy. But, you know, a lot of things that are being flown around in regards to what happened on January 6th in regards to the Capitol. And I'm letting people in. I apologize. Sorry. And, you know, it was something that was building up, right? And so it's like, do you deplatform people like we did to, you know, former President Trump? That's not going to be the answer. We're going to have to live with social media. We're going to have to live with technology. And so this is a great starting point for us to be able to talk to our neighbors and our family on countering disinformation out there. So thank you again for being here. And I'd like to introduce our presenter and speaker tonight, Kaz. Hi, Kaz.
Hi, thanks for having me, Sally. It's nice to see everybody. I see some familiar faces out there. Vanessa, you are looking stunning as always. Hi, my name is Kaz Margina. And yeah, thank you, Sally, for inviting me to be here. So as people kind of start to come in, I'll just start with a story of how I came up with this program and why it is so important to me personally. So I came up with this disinformation, countering disinformation program back during the campaign cycle, because I'm really passionate about making sure that people can make an informed choice when they vote. The most important thing to me is that they're making an informed choice. And I was noticing there was a lot of disinformation flying around that was affecting not only how people were voting, but whether or not they were voting at all. So I put together a program to help people in their lives to counter some of that disinformation that was flying around out there. And then during the campaign cycle, during all that, disinformation became much more personal to me over the past couple of years, as I have a 19-year-old child, and they started to very slowly, slip down the path of believing conspiracies. And, you know, it started off innocently enough, you know, they're a kid and they'll just say something, you're like, oh, that's a little strange, you know, that they believe that, or that they feel this way. So it started off small, and then it just sort of started to snowball to the point that, yeah, it was really affecting their life choices. And then they were pushing everybody in the family away, pushing me away, to the point that, yeah, they ended up disowning all of us, and being part of a very, so they basically got radicalized and joined a group that told them to cut off their whole family, and they did. So that I got to see that that disinformation, not just knowing it then academically how it works, but, you know, it was a huge part of then my life, affecting my life, seeing, you know, the human side of it. The good news is for us that we were able to keep those doors open, didn't push my kid into a corner, kept the doors open, and just flooded them with unconditional love. And they came back. They ended up leaving that group. there was like this really emotional moment where they just screamed. They were like, I don't even believe this stuff anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid is back. So, but it's a long journey. It's a long journey bringing that back. So when I'm talking about disinformation here, you know, I talk about it from, you know, from knowledge base, but then also just know that I really do understand this stuff. I really feel this stuff. And this information really helped me. So if this sounds familiar, if my story sounds somewhat familiar to something that you're going through, or someone that you know is going through, yeah, this stuff helped me. So I hope it also helps you as well. Just for a little housekeeping. So we'll keep people on mute just to make it easier. But I got a whole bunch of questions ahead of time, like really phenomenal questions. So thank you so much for submitting questions. And I'm going to pepper them in throughout the presentation. And if it seems right, you know, Sally can unmute people and we can make it a discussion as we go along. So I'm going to have slides up. But then, yeah, I'll be answering your questions as we go along. All right, so we're going to share my screen. Hopefully y'all can see that. Good. All right, so again, my name is Kaz, and I am here with a nationwide all-volunteer group called Building Bridges for America. So this group we're almost a year old now. So we started during the presidential campaign, the general election, and we started about a year ago. A lot of us had been either volunteers or volunteer state leads for Mayor Pete Buttigieg's his presidential campaign. And when that ended, we started Building Bridges just to keep that going, keep that work going, because we really do care and value and support progress. And we want to work to keep people engaged and informed in working in our democracy. And through that work, we are committed, we're striving for racial equity and for bridging that rural-urban divide, and to keep democratic reform going, keep our democracy strong, and for creating a sense of belonging for everyone. And so our volunteers have a lot of programs to make that easy for people to take part in, to be informed and engaged. And I'll just highlight a couple of them. One is, it's called Building Bridges to the Local. That is how we support local candidates. And our first local candidate for 2021 is in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I'm in Colorado, so I'm very excited that our first candidate is in Colorado. We're supporting Jenny Arndt's campaign to be mayor of Fort Collins. Jenny is, she's a fantastic state rep here in Colorado, and she really is the absolute master at bridging that rural-urban divide. So if you ever have a chance to talk to her and to hear about how she does what we're talking about here today, a lot will be about, about when you're talking about disinformation, a lot of it is just about being empathetic and understanding people that are different from you. And she's the absolute master at that. So we're very excited to support her campaign. And on Sunday, we are having an event to make it really easy for everybody across the whole country to support Jenny's campaign. She's going to talk to us on an online event, and then we're going to write postcards to voters in Fort Collins to get them to turn out the vote. Another thing,
go ahead and put that information in the chat for everybody too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Sally, for populating the chat as we go along. So yeah, check out the chat for information as we go through. And then another thing starting next week is our book club. So if you are looking for a political book club that isn't about talking about politics, it's about actually doing politics, actually taking control and doing something, this is your book club. Wes Jensen puts on an absolutely stellar book club. Our book that we're reading right now is Stacey Abrams' Our Time Is Now. So that starts next week. You can also go on our website and see videos from all of our previous book clubs, because Wes will bring on guests each week to either the author of the book or people that are somewhat tied to the book, and it give really inspirational like stories about how they actually, you know, take control to organize and make a difference in their communities. So it's a really great book club that is starting next week. So and then we got other programs as well. Again, it's just about making it easy for people to stay informed and engaged. And you can go to buildingbridgesforamerica.com and see all of our events. And I'm actually going to dive first into one of our questions. So we got a whole bunch of questions ahead of time. And one of the questions was, how do we talk to friends who don't want to get involved at all, even though they're against disinformation? So I like to say, you know, you're basically asking, how do you talk politics with someone who doesn't care about politics? So this is a lot of people. Even in our last presidential election, we had about 40% of people didn't vote. That's not too, it's more people voted, but still a huge percentage of our population doesn't bother to vote. And I like to say that they are choosing not to vote. They're not lazy. They are making deciding to not vote. And there's a foundation called the Knight Foundation. They did this great study following the 2016 campaign called that's 100 million people who didn't vote. And they did an extensive survey of those people of those non-voters. And they found that the #1 reason why people didn't vote is they did not think that their vote mattered. They didn't think politics matters. They don't understand how politics walks into their life and affects them. And they don't feel like they have any power to do anything about it. Or they don't have time to put in, don't feel like they have enough time to put in to do anything about it. So that is making people feel, very, powerless and apathetic about the process. So if you have somebody like that in your life who really just doesn't care and they don't want to get involved, chances are that's what they're feeling. They're feeling like politics doesn't matter. So what you can do is you can tell them your story about why you care, right? If you care, tell them why you care. Be very specific, be very real, show how it affects you. So and it's very pedestrian. It's not, it doesn't have to be very sophisticated. So I'll say it for, let's say I wanted, I was telling somebody about Jenny Art's campaign for mayor, and they're like, yeah, I really don't care, right? Well, I would say, for me, it's just like, I love Fort Collins. I want to be able to, bike around, bike to work, do all of that, but it's really unsafe. Like my brother will do it. My brother will weave in and out of traffic. But for me, I can't commute to work by bike because I just don't feel comfortable. It's just not safe. But Jenny is very committed to, as mayor, making it safer for me to be able to bike around town. So for me, if I want to make my life better, if I want to be able to bike around town, I want to make sure that Jenny gets in there, not some other person who isn't going to help me be able to ride my bike around. So I'm going to do what I can to help Jenny out. I mean, I'm going to vote for her. That's one vote. But if I can, show up on Sunday and at this event at Building Bridges and get a couple more people to vote, it's like I just tripled my vote, right? And let's say I'm talking to a friend, I could be like, and if you come with me, right, that's a vote too. If you come with me, listen to Jenny, you like her too, and I just got another vote as well, and I'm that much closer to being a bike around Fort Collins. So just by talking about politics and breaking it down and making it super accessible, show how it affects my life, directly affects my life, and how I can take a political action that can fit into my schedule, fit into my day, and actually work, is hopefully then going to start to make your friend who feels apathetic, that they don't have power and they don't have agency, make them feel like they can do something. All right, we're going to dive in unless anybody else has any other questions we are going to dive right into our disinformation. So you're here to pop that disinformation bubble, right? To counter disinformation. So the first obvious question is, what is disinformation? Well, there's three terms out there that I want to make sure that we define right up front. So there's misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Both misinformation and disinformation are lies. Fake, false, not true. So both misinformation, disinformation are not true. The difference is that with misinformation, the person who is sharing it actually believes it is true. So they don't have an intent to do harm. Whereas disinformation is the really bad stuff. These are your bad actors because the person who is sharing it knows that is not true and they're sharing information they know will do harm. So it's a little hard sometimes to tell the difference between if something is misinformation or disinformation because you're talking about intent. And it's hard to tell where people's intent lies. So sometimes you'll hear me kind of interchangeably using the words disinformation and misinformation when it's somewhere in that gray area. There's a third term called malinformation. That's actually true information, but it's like private information that's put out there to harm someone. And we're actually not going to talk about it in this here today. So there's a lot of kinds of disinformation, misinformation out there. So like I said, it's kind of gray. So this chart shows all of them. It's going from the left where they're a little less harmful all the way over to the really bad stuff. So you're talking about stuff like you call it clickbait, or where the caption doesn't match up with the context of the story. That is actually a kind of misinformation. Or, you know, sometimes people will take information like a true quote or something like that and use it out of context. That is also a form of misinformation. Could be disinformation, like I said, if they had the intent to do harm with it. And then you get into the really bad stuff where they're just making stuff up whole cloth. So completely fabricated content is kind of definite disinformation. If you're making stuff up or you're manipulating content, you are doing that with the intent to harm. So these terms and this slide came from this study that actually came out of 2018 from UNESCO. Put this on, and UNESCO is it's a global organization that put on this so it's noted up in the corner, the journalism, fake news, and disinformation. So again, this is from 2018. This isn't new, and this is global. It's not just happening here in America. And they put out this, it's both a study and then their training modules. It's actually made to teach people and kids how to have media literacy and be able to understand and recognize disinformation. So that's where I got some of this information from. And I know Sally's popping into the chat some links to this stuff. If you want to do a deeper dive, you can grab the links there. And it's also on our website. If you go to our website under Pop the Bubble, you're going to see all of this stuff, including the slides. You can have the slides and use them however you'd like, plus all the links to all the reference materials. So if you want to do a deep dive, there it is ready for you. So we're going to go over a couple of examples of these kinds of disinformation a little bit later on. So how do we get here? How do we get to the point that we are talking on a Zoom call about how to counter disinformation? How did I get to the point that, you know, I lost my kids to being radicalized? It's like, how did we get to this point, right? So again, this is going on all over the globe. It's not just here in America. And so UNESCO broke down the really basics of how we got here. And it starts with there's these three very important interlocking, working together pieces. One is media and our information providers. Two is our citizens, people. And then three is government and democracy. So all of those need to work together. The media needs to make sure that the citizens are informed. the citizens need to make sure that the media is informed, and then informed citizens, so they're making an informed choice, then they are, we have a healthy democracy. And if a government is providing good governance, right, that's going to the media so that people know that that they're providing the services. So all of this stuff is all linked together. In the pre-digital age, so I remember when the TV just had a knob on it, right? So in the pre-digital era, where we didn't have so many choices of so many sources of information, that was something called the gatekeeper model, where those very few media sources, they had to have really good, strong journalistic practice to make sure everything was fact-checked before it went out there, because there was only, so many sources of media. And then also because, you can only hit one of those few dials, all of us can only hit one of those few dials on the TV, we had a real shared experience of the news. So you didn't, you could pick if you wanted to watch CBS or ABC, but still, you had a large shared experience of the news. Nowadays, completely different. Nowadays, there are so many sources of information. We're just swimming in sources of information. So we have to be our own gatekeepers. We need to decide for ourselves what is credible news, what is true. We need to sort all that out. And it turns out that people, our human brains, are really, really bad at this. We are not designed to be very good at this. So what is happening is that people are creating their own for themselves from however they curate the news and whatever they are deciding to believe to be true. We're creating our own media bubbles. And then we're also actually, because there's no shared experience of the news anymore, we're actually creating our own realities, even our own sense of the truth. So that's the soup we're swimming in. And then you add into that, that wasn't bad enough, then you add into that bad actors that are putting out intentionally misleading content. So even if you're really good at telling what is true or not, there's people out there trying to trick you. So that then alone just lowers that sense of social trust and then creates more of a sense of that you're living in your own reality. So how then are we supposed to gatekeep? How are we supposed to filter out all that soup and make sure that the information that we're getting is true? The first thing to do is curate your sources. So there are a zillion sources out there. Like I said, this is just this slide just has a tiny little snippet of all of the sources of information out there. And these are just, like the published media, right? You're also talking about, your friends talking, you got local news, you got all of that. This is just a small little snippet of all the stuff that we need to filter out. And so how then can you trust if a source is giving you something that is factual? And then how do you know then, to be able to gauge, the bias of the source? So that's what this chart does. This is AdFonts Media puts out this media bias chart where they analyze the news based off of two factors. So on the horizontal axis, they are saying the news that they're putting out, is it biased? Is it either neutral or is it biased left or right? It's not a judgment, if it's biased left or right. It's just good to know when you're processing that information, where that falls, especially if it aligns perfectly with where your personal ideology or beliefs stand. Because if it aligns perfectly with you, then you're really likely to process that information as being true, right? You're already going to be in line. And then that makes it, then you just need to be cognizant that you might not question that source as much as you would if it was further away. So that's that the horizontal line lets you know where it stands as far as bias. And if it's not neutral, that, you know, you just need to take that into account. Either, you know, understand that you're going to agree with it way too much, or understand that you're not going to agree with it. You're going to have to do some work.
Kaz,
Then
I
the
also wanted to mention in regards to bias, sometimes we stay in our heads when we are just reading or watching or having discussions with people who think just like us. And that's why this chart is so great, because it gives us, it tells us what actors out there, what media is actually neutral or tries to be neutral. And that's where, you know, you want to get your real news sources. And then, you know, like I know for me, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are just like me, where you are, you know, you may subscribe to, you know, one of the ones that's on, you know, one side or the other, because that may be your ideology. But then you also subscribe to something that is in opposition of what your ideology is. And that's so you're able to inform yourself, and you're able to see how other people are thinking and their perspectives. And then, and you can make your own, you know, your thought process. You can do more research. You can dive more into it by having both perspectives. So I just kind of wanted to say that too, that it's always great to be able to have both perspectives, and not just one-sided.
Exactly. Yeah. Create your own balance, right? So yeah, this helps you make sure that you are creating, that your sources that you're pulling from are balanced. Another one, then, going on the vertical axis there, they analyze it for, if it's higher up on the top, they're more just straight up fact-based reporting, whereas in the middle they're more opinion, and down at the bottom is when they're actually making up news. So that's the fake news, more down at the bottom. So they do, the AdFonts analyzes the media for that as well. So that will let you also then determine, like, if you're trying to decide if something is true, if it's higher up, it's going to be more fact-based. So you know, it's kind of like your first check is to check your sources. And if you're seeing something that comes from AP or Reuters, or actually, you know, I'm in Colorado, and we're very lucky. Our Denver Post newspaper is is right on the line for neutrality, and it's the highest newspaper for just reporting the facts. So I'm very lucky that my local paper as well is a good source. It's also a good one if you're looking to fact check. To check those sources that are there on the top and in the middle. If you really want to know something is fact, that is a good place to go. And we actually got a couple questions from people talking about something along these lines. I'm actually going to share a different slide in a second, but I want to answer your questions. One is, how do you guide or help people to rethink their position/ideology when they are already up in arms against any credible institution or source? So how do we bring out the greater good in the way that they communicate and present information? So in this case, this is someone that sounds like someone that they know is not really, there might be a credible source, like I said, maybe on this chart, it's showing as a credible source, and they don't believe it. They do not believe that that source is credible. Right? So what do you do about that? And I kind of feel like that brings up a whole other like larger discussion, which I'll just briefly talk about, is because when you're talking about how do we bring out the greater good in the way they communicate, you know, there's no one sense of what greater good means. There's, in America, we got two, we have two moral groups that are two moral senses of morality. And we have since the beginning. This is not something new. This is since the beginning of America. We've always had either conservatives or progressives since the beginning. This is not new to America. And actually the funny thing, the biggest, from the beginning, the biggest indicator of whether or not you grow up and consider yourself to be conservative or progressive is the distance to your neighbor. So this is right from the very beginning of America. We've had these kind of two moral systems, and there's no one right one. Right? They're both good. They're both great, right? So sometimes I hear people say, it's like, oh, you know, that person's crazy, but, you know, then they think you're crazy. It's like, well, we're not crazy. They're not crazy. You're not crazy. We're just different. We actually, like I said, from the beginning of America, we've always had these two different sides. And that hasn't changed. That's not the problem. That's not what's going on right now. So when you're looking at that media chart and you're looking at that spectrum going across, that spectrum, that's not the problem. If you're wondering what's causing disinformation, it's not that we have two moral systems in America, because we always have. It's not that, you know, there's people saying we're more polarized than ever. It's like, we're actually not, you know, we're not actually more polarized than ever. What it is that we're missing a lot of those shared experiences that would bring us together and allow us to, you know, really understand people that have a different moral system than us. So when you are talking to people about, you know, they don't trust that media, the media source that, you know, that's neutral, they don't trust it. The problem is the trust, right? That's the problem. It's not the bias one way or another. It's not about their ideology. It's just that they don't have a sense of trust, and we're missing that piece that we don't use that common language anymore. And that's what you'll hear me talking over and over again throughout this presentation, is about not being able to counter disinformation with facts or with logic or with morality, because we have there's two senses of morality. That's a difference, right? And then that wires our brains differently. So we have a different way of interpreting facts and logic, but we're still people, right? So there's stuff we have in common. We still have shared stories, we still have shared values, and we have empathy. We all have empathy. So that is what we want to appeal to. So yeah, going back to my slides here. So when you're looking, if you're talking to somebody who doesn't trust a source because of its left-right bias, that's actually not what they don't trust. What they don't trust is, yeah, they don't have that shared sense of belonging anymore, so they don't really understand people that are different than them like we used to be able to when we had more shared experiences. So I mean, the solution for that is to, you know, encourage them to spend more time with people, like Sally was saying, pick sources from different sides, spend more time with people that are not like you, and build up that trust for people that have a different take than you do. And then the other question I want to address, kind of along these same lines, is as a progressive Christian, I am very interested in countering false narratives from the Christian right and/or Christian nationalism. So they're interested in a discussion about the intersection of religion and far-right ideology, and how I can make a positive difference in discussions with friends and family who have conflated their religious beliefs with their patriotism. There's a ton there to, you know, we could talk about that for a whole hour. So there's a ton there to take apart. But what I just want to address is that, one, this is a very common thing. It's a very common thing for people to say that they vote one way or another, or they are like, say that, you know, they vote Republican because they just see that as being a decent person, right? It is, they do conflate their politics with their morality. A lot of people conflate then their morality with their religion, right? It seems to make sense, but they're actually not the same thing. So if you want to talk with people who are, like I said, putting their religion and their morality and their politics all together in one, kind of the first place to start is to try and disentangle those three things and make sure that they understand that yeah, there's conservatives and progressives. There are two moral systems in America, but people that belong to both those moral systems can share religion. So you can't have then a religion that is tied to morality, because you can have two moral systems and one religion. So they are very different things. So if you can start to disentangle that for people, at least start getting an awareness that there is a difference there, that might help to start break some of that down. All right, that was a lot of stuff about that horizontal axis, but you had a lot of questions on that, so thank you for providing those. All right, let's dive into actually identifying disinformation. So we talked about what disinformation is and how we need to then be able to filter out the soup that we're swimming in to be able to identify what is true. And we talked about then curating your sources, so picking your right sources to try and help you make sure that the source that you're giving is more likely to give you information that is true. But that's not the only place we get our sources of information, right? Like you're on Facebook, your family posts something. Now you have to deal with that, right? It's unsolicited. You did not, So how then do you take that piece of information and then determine if something is disinformation or if it's true? So we can start with this this post. Let's say your family posted this back during the campaign cycle. And it says the Biden-Harris ticket encapsulates how the Western, I still can't see it, how the Western left will give in to right-wing populism. So let's say that came across, one of your family members posted that. Is that legit? Is this a legit piece of news? Is the Biden-Harris ticket giving in to right-wing populism? Well, I'll give you a little hint. This was actually the first case of Russian interference that the FBI caught during the general election cycle. So this was Russia, that they were creating these posts and they were planting them in far left circles to try to get people to not vote at all, not vote for the Biden-Harris ticket. So first of all, when you're talking about that left-right on that media bias, just know that disinformation is both sides. It happens at both extremes. It's not just, something that, we might be talking, you might hear a lot in the news about, the Trump campaign putting disinformation out there. But it's actually both sides, right? It's both political extremes are putting out disinformation, and Russia is helping, was caught in this case, helping, in putting information out on both sides. So they just wanted people not to vote, right? They didn't care who you voted for. They actually wanted you to just plain old not vote. So this was caught as Russians doing this. But how are you supposed to know that, right? You just had that one post show up. How are you supposed to dissect that and know that that wasn't something that was legitimate? So the first thing is check your source. Just like we were talking about for ad fonts, check your source when you're trying to find information to bring in. If information comes to you, the first thing you should do is check the source. In this case, it was called, this came from something called peacedata.net. No point in looking that up on ad fonts because they do not exist. So if you Googled them and looked them up, you would see that that is not a legitimate source. Second is to see where they posted it. So just know that if you are in an area that is is more of an interest to people at the political extremes, you are much more susceptible to disinformation because they are targeting people that are on the two extremes. And then the final thing I call it the smell test, and we'll get into how to refine your smell test abilities. But just by looking at that headline, that's just not something that's a very that's an opinion, that's not a fact. And it's just not something you would normally see in a headline. So hopefully just by reading that headline, little blinkers go off in your head saying, I don't think that sounds like a legitimate news story. And if you want more help or more practice and being able to identify disinformation in social media posts, I recommend a website called Spot the Troll. It's put on by Cornell University, and it's an internet quiz, but it's a really good one because it's hard. It's really hard, and they do a really good job training you, exactly why something is disinformation or why something may look like disinformation that it's not. It's really hard. So I recommend going to spotthetroll.org if you feel like you need more information about or more practice in being able to identify disinformation. And one of the questions that we got was, what are some of the best resources for fact-checking disinformation? So as far as like direct resources, there are some services out there that you pay for that will go through the stuff that you're looking at and determine if something is disinformation or not. So if you feel like you need something like that, that is out there, but it is something that you do need to pay for. I prefer just to check it against, again, on the AdFunks chart, check it against the sources that are really reliable. And so check the information there. And then also where you're at, where you're sitting, where you're finding this information. There are people, there are subject matter experts out there. So if you can find an area that is where people really, know something about a specific subject and see what they're talking about. So keep your networks diverse, if you're in a diverse network of people where if someone says something, somebody who's a subject matter expert can jump in there and say, no, that is not true. That's a healthy environment. You want to find yourself to be in an environment like that in order to check your information. So it's kind of like, rather than giving you a resource, I'm just basically saying always be checking the sources for your information. Go to reliable sources to find out if information is true before you repeat something, retweet something, or anything. And also just do the homework ahead of time to make sure that you are in an environment that whatever you're curated is a good mix of stuff. So yeah, you're not in an echo chamber. So, and the next question was, they would like to know how to respond to relatives who spread misinformation on Facebook. And another person asked along the same lines, like, what is the best approach for engaging with people who consistently share false or misleading information on social media? So let's say your family member did share this post that, was disinformation. What do you do? How do you respond to that? The first thing is just to know that when you're dealing with an algorithm, and we'll get to some slides later on, but when you're dealing with an algorithm, anytime you touch something on social media, you are saying that it is important. So even if you're touching it to say, this is a terrible piece of whatever, the algorithm thinks that you were saying it's important. And then more people need to see it. So be very careful when you're on social media before you click on it at all, because yeah, that's going to tell the algorithm that that something is important. So if you see someone is posting something that is disinformation, kind of the best thing to do is to pull them aside. Like if you're on Facebook, message them. If it's somebody that reach out to them, directly and just inform them. Just let them know. Doesn't have to be a big judgment statement like, oh my gosh, don't you know not to post that? Just be very factual. Just say this one post is disinformation, and you can tell by, you know, peacedata.net is not a legitimate news source, right? So just keep it very simple to that. If you feel like you must create a comment in a Facebook post to your friend, so rather than reaching out directly, create a comment and then just say, you know, you can say, hey, look, this is a definite, you know, this is definitely a piece of disinformation. Then just leave it at that. So if you feel like you have to put something out there, you can post that with a correction and then just leave it alone. So walk away, leave it alone. And then one more question kind of along these lines was, how do I talk to my kids? That's important. Like I said at the very beginning, I was talking about UNESCO, how they have a whole curriculum there for how to teach media literacy to kids. You know, you could do a deep dive and go into that kind of curriculum. You can also just talk to them straight, right? Just tell them how it is. You can just say, you know, hey, you know what, there is a lot of information out there. We're just swimming in this world of information, and some of it is bad. And so we need to be able to tell what is true and what is not. So to do that, you know, here, check your resources, show them how they can check to see if, check the source and make sure that it's something, you know, good or, you know, fact-based. Next is to be aware of your bias. Make sure that kids understand that, you know, when you really want something to be true, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to believe it. So just having kids understand that. Knowing the algorithm, I mean, younger people definitely are in tune with, you know, how all the social media and the algorithms work. So if they just understand from a technical standpoint how that works. And then finally, you know, use a little empathy for us old people, that let them know that, you know, it's harder for adults because for us, this is new, right? Kids don't know any different, but for us, this is all new. So if you can convey to them that this stuff is hard, we're trying to figure it out. If they can help us out, that'd be great. You know, really give them that agency to be like, hey, adults need to know how to figure this out. So if you can help us figure out how to better figure out what is true or not, that's great. So that's my advice for how to talk to kids. All right, so we went through how to filter out in that soup to curate information, to identify if something is disinformation or not. Another piece that's important to know is on the algorithm side, on the technical side, how this works. That disinformation is not an organic product. It's a very intentional, very technical thing that is put on by not a lot of people. Very small number of people are creating all of this disinformation. So if it feels overwhelming, just know that it's not like this organic thing that has gotten out of control. It's actually, it is being handled by just a small number of people. And they call these super spreaders. So especially on social media, they call it super spreaders. So there was, it's hard to find data on some of this stuff, but recently when Trump's Twitter account was taken off, it gave data scientists a great opportunity then to see the impact of when one of these super spreaders, so these accounts that have a ton of followers who are putting out this consistent messaging, when one falls, when one goes away, that then allowed them to see then the impact that's out there. And they were able to find that so during the last campaign cycle, of all of that information out there about misleading narratives about voting, that only 20 people, think of all of the users on Twitter, think how many people are out there. Only 20 accounts were responsible for sending out the original post for 20% of the misleading narratives. So you're not talking about a ton of people, very small number of people. And then 50% of the retweets of that information came from just 10% of Twitter users. So most people even on Twitter, are pretty disciplined and can recognize misinformation and not spread it. So when it is being spread, it's primarily being spread very intentionally by people, these super spreaders. And it's interesting to note that actually people on Facebook are worse at identifying disinformation, because 29% of Facebook users spread misinformation, whereas only 5% of Twitter people do. So yeah, if you're on Facebook, you could probably use a little bit more work being able to identify that information. So the big question I think a lot of people have is, how do people believe this stuff, right? So I know that that my kid was telling me things that I just couldn't believe. Stuff was coming out of their mouth and I'm like, how? You're an intelligent person. I know you, love you. How can you believe this stuff? So I want to talk about that, just as humans, as we are as human beings, how does information come in and process it out? Like I said, we're actually really bad at this. We're really bad at determining if a piece of information is true or not. Because when a piece of information comes in a split second, our brain asks us 5 questions. First thing it asks us is, do others believe it? We're social creatures, so our first thing to do is to look around and to see if other people believe it. So, I mean, that right there is, if something true or not, you know, it's this like, right off the bat is this like, well, if other people believe it, then I believe it. So it's this like that group think going. So the next thing is, can I easily find evidence for this being true? It's not, can I find evidence at all? It's, can I easily find evidence? Meaning, like, if you've seen this before, you've encountered this before, and therefore you have experience with it, then you can say that it's true. Whereas if you haven't seen it before, you don't know, you know, if something is true. Just because you can't easily find that evidence for it, you're most likely to dismiss it as not being true. Whereas if you've seen it before, you're going to say it's true. The next thing is this compatible with what I believe. So that is obvious then, that if you've seen this information before, if it all kind of jives, all makes sense. And like I was saying about when you're choosing your content, if you're choosing something that is already aligns with stuff that you believe, you're much likely to believe anything that comes along from a source like that. You're going to believe it to be true. You're not going to question it. Whereas if it is, if you're doing like what Sally said, you pick something from the other side, give yourself balance, you're less likely to believe that information is true, because it's something that you don't already, isn't compatible with what you already believe. The fourth one is, you're asking yourself, does it tell a good story? We're still all human beings, and the very basis of our form of communication was formed around the fire, telling stories about hunting buffalo or whatever, right? So that's still who we are as people. So if something tells a good story, we are likely to believe that it is true. And then the last thing is, it familiar source of information. So it can either be familiar because it's someone you know, like a family member, or it's familiar because you always watch that same news program every night with that same anchor, right? So all those kind of ways, what it does is all that in that instant that news, a piece of news comes in, you're evaluating for a true, is it familiar? Have I seen this before? Then you're going to think that it's true. Whereas if you haven't seen it before, it's much harder for you to believe that something like that is true. So it all comes down to familiarity. So, and there is a study that I link here that is that people who were told 3 times that a statement was false are more likely to believe it to be true than if they were only told it once. So just from the repetition of hearing it over and over again, even though you're being told that it's not true, just from the repetition, our brain starts to process it as true. And then you add another level onto that, so it's not just that things that are familiar do we think is true, if we want something to be true, our brain will go through amazing gymnastics to make something true. I think we've all been there, where been in situations where, you know, it's like, yeah, if you want something to be true, you will convince yourself that it is. So what that means then is that if to be led down that path, like my kid was slowly led down this path to believing this really outrageous conspiracies, it's because they heard it over and over and over again. It was just repetition. Maybe the first time they heard it, they thought it was crazy. Maybe the first 6 times they heard it, they thought it was crazy. But then after a while of hearing it over and over and over and over again, your brain, it's just your brain, right? You can be a very smart person, but your brain is wired to start to believe that is true. So people that put out disinformation, they know this. They know that just by repeating it over and over and over again, it will wear people down. Just, you know, no matter how smart they are, your brain is wired for that, and you're going to start to believe it. Also, if you're more predisposed to disinformation in the first place, people that start off with a low sense of social trust, and usually find people that are on the more ideological extremes have a lower sense of social trust, that they are more predisposed to believe in this disinformation and encountering this information because they're being targeted. And then also people that are seeking a sense of belonging, they're more isolated, especially now we're in COVID times where, you know, we're much more isolated. We're not having those interactions with people. And, you know, we're creating our own realities. Like all of these reasons are things that we're becoming a much more lonely, you know, culture and people. And so people that are isolated, they're seeking that community. And for those people, those bad actors that are looking for people to believe this disinformation, they know this and they prey on them. And they know that when, as the quote here says, that when someone whispers, trust no one, they know what they're really saying is trust me. They're creating that community that they're looking for. So, you know, our human brains are just not made to process, you know, this repeated information. Brains are not made to process difficult information. We like familiar information. And, you know, we're in a place right now where more and more people are becoming isolated and seeking this kind of belonging. And that is what disinformation and conspiracies are actually providing that community for them. I'll give a quick example of slipping down that slope of starting to believe this stuff and how they use repetition, how bad actors use repetition. So in this case is there was the disinformation that the Democrats were shredding ballots. I was out there, that, you know, they're shredding ballots and huge numbers of ballots that they were shredding. And I mean, it started off here on October 8th. They just Googled, somebody out there in the world just Googled a picture, Google searched a picture of an empty trailer with some scraps of paper in it, and they found it, right? So this old picture from some printing process, you know, they dropped off the container at the recycling thing. When it came back, there was these shreds of paper. So old random photo, and some bad actor took that picture, found that picture in a Google search, and said, this is evidence of shredded ballots. I mean, completely made it up, right? It had nothing to do with it. And I mean, maybe most of us can look at that and say, oh, okay, that's pretty silly, right? It's like, I don't think that's true. But then they follow that up. They just keep repeating it over and over and over again. And they followed up a matter of months later with, this time, a video. This is a video now saying, it's just like, look, this is Georgia. There's a video of a guy taking up the trash in the back of a facility. And we're like, look, this is proof. This guy, he's shredding votes. And I mean, maybe you and I or other people can look at that and say, you know, I think it's just a guy taking out the trash. don't think that's what it is. But if you were already predisposed over and over and over again to say that, you know, that this is evidence of shredding ballots, when you see another piece of evidence, it just solidifies that. And then you get down all the way to January 5th, where yet again, they just took a random picture out there of a warehouse, and they're said, yet it's a, yep, this is proof again. The more bigger story attached to it about how they got that photo and all this kind of stuff. And they put it out there again. And like I said, if you've been disposed to this for months and months and months and months, that, you know, when this comes along on January 5th, you are much more likely to believe it to be true, just because your brain heard it so many times that you're like, well, you know, it must be true. And then you start getting all those other things. Well, look, other people are believing it, right? So then it must be true. All right. And then the big thing is, you know, if you want it to be true, you know, you really wanted, you know, Trump to win that election. And here is someone giving you, you know, information, all these other people, they're saying that this is what you want it to be true. Like I said, your brain can do amazing things to when it wants something to be true. So this is just a little snapshot to show how you can slip down that slope to believing things that even when you first heard them, you might not have believed them. Bad actors will bring you down that path. So what can we do about this? Oh, last little piece is, I'll start here, then I'll go back. So what can we do about that? What can we do about using, okay, now we know that is how our brains work, and we know that bad actors are using that to manipulate us and get us to believe the bad stuff. Well, how can we use that same information to help people believe the good stuff, believe the truth? So first of all, you want to start off with empathy. Always start off with empathy, because that is how you are going to reach through to people no matter where they are in the political spectrum. You're not then talking about politics at all. You're just talking as people. That's the piece that we've been missing for a long time, is that just connecting, talking to people that are different than us. That's that empathy piece. So always start with that, because that is actually what they're longing for. That's actually what they want. So always start there. And so if you start off with empathy and you say, you know, I can really feel that you're yearning to have a different result, you know, in the election than what it was. It's like, really just understand that, right? It's like not just connect with them on that level as a person, that, you know, it hurts. It hurts when things are not the way that you want them to be. And then just keep, again, repetition will create that repetition of the truth. So find one piece of truth that, if you know a chink in their armor or what their weak spot is, right? Find that one piece of truth, that one thing they really care about, and just keep hammering home at that one thing. So rather than 100 different reasons why why something is not true, just find one. Just find one and just keep repeating it over and over again. So let's say they believed that those ballots were being shredded. You can just keep saying over and over again, hey, you know, they grabbed that photo off a Google search. It's not real. That is, you know, they just made that up, and, you know, they know that you are really hurting right now, and they're taking advantage of that. They're taking advantage of you. Just keep on that one photo. Don't talk about how can you be so stupid? How can you believe this? None of that. No. Just keep hitting that one thing over and over again, and with that sense of empathy. And then if you can, use any kind of stories, imagery, anything like that to kind of really make it stick. So like I said, if they believe that the shredding ballots was true, then you can say, you know, again, just walk them through. It's like, somebody just literally sat down their computer and Google searched, you know, empty bin with shreds of paper in it, and they just made that up. So if you tell it like a story like that, and then again, just keep saying it over and over again. They made that up. You know, they know that you're hurting. I know you're hurting. They knew that you were hurting. You know, it's like, I want to help you. These people are, you know, who were coming up with that. They're taking you for a sucker. They were trying to manipulate you, you know, and here, I care about you, right? I'm your friend. And, you know, I want to help you. So I'm trying to tell you, it's like that photo is not real. So again, just trying to use that empathy, make that connection, and hammer home that one point over and over and over again. And then I'll actually get to a question that somebody asked along these lines, and there are actually two. One is, how do you deal with Blue Lives Matter, people who believe in Blue Lives Matter, who, when you point out the facts of the death, that like one Capitol police officer was killed, 141 are injured, and there are 2 suicides, right? How do you deal with that, and how can you deal with their if they believe in conspiracy theory beliefs, in this case, QAnon conspiracy theory beliefs? Well, in this case, if you know that they care about our police force, that is the piece that you can hammer away. And that's the one thing, you know that that's something that they really care about. And so that's something that you can just keep hammering at that one truth over and over again, you know, and connect with them on that. Like if you also, you know, want to support our police force, then, you know, connect with that, saying, I care about them too. And for me, I was, you know, really appalled to see people, you know, that a cop was killed and that they were so badly, you know, injured, right? So connect on that. So they can, you know, so don't address, the hard thing is to not address when people believe conspiracy theories, to not address any of that, to give them that. It's hard to give them that because you feel like you're condoning it, but you're not. What you're doing is you are connecting to them as a person, as a whole person. That whole person is not a conspiracy theory, right? When my kid was lost, my kid was not a conspiracy theory. My kid was my kid. So I'm not going to throw out my whole kid because of something that they believed. So it's like, connect to them on that other, what makes them a person, what makes them the person that you love. So focus on that. And then find that one thing either that you have in common or that you know is something that could be that one piece that you just sort of keep drilling down on to pop that bubble for them. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to let all of that conspiracy stuff go and feel like, but yeah, it's got to let it all go. And then the other question along the same lines was, how do you counter when your spouse literally believes nothing but untrue information and you can't get through? It's like a cult. Same kind of thing. So I know we're going long, so I apologize. I'll try to wrap up here. I'm almost done. But same thing. And I just want to say that when it can seem daunting, right, that they believe something so big, so huge, how do you counter all of that? And the thing is, you don't counter all of it, you counter one little bit. So when you want to pop a bubble, you don't push it on all sides, you poke one little hole in it, right? So it actually, that you're going back to the way our brains work, we actually, we have a higher sense of confidence in what we believe, the less we know about something. So if you give some people just a little bit of information, one little piece of information, it actually makes them start snowballing down to having less confidence and starting to questioning things on their own. So all you have to do, like I said, is just keep beating away at one little bit of information. So if your spouse, like I said, this question was that they don't believe anything except all this untrue information, you just need to get one piece of truth in there, one piece. Pick it, pick your battle, right? Got all that stuff, pick your one battle and just hammer it home. Because right now, you know, when they believe all that stuff, they're at what this chart shows as Mount Stupid. It doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that they have they're very confident in what they think they know. So if you give them a little piece of information, they start to realize that they don't know everything. There's a, you know, they start questioning. then they themselves will go down that path to everything else. And just always make sure that you are keeping those doors open and connecting with them as that person that you love, that unconditional love. And it's like I said, it can feel like you're condoning it. Well, you're really not. Like I said, you're really just connecting to the person underneath there, and that's the person that needs you. Because I might know all of this stuff academically of what to do, what disinformation is and how to counter it. But when it happened to my own kid, my kid didn't need me knowing this information. My kid needed their mom, just needed their mom. So all this stuff, knowing all this stuff is great, knowing how to get through is great, but the most important thing is just being there for your family, for your friends, making sure that that door is open so they're not being pushed further into a corner, that they can always come on back out. So, and then the last thing I want to talk about is what I call I heard statements. So this is the last thing I'll cover, because we were talking a lot about social media, how to counter stuff that you see on social media, but a lot of this stuff is just out there in the world, right? You're just walking through your day, going through your day, talking to people that you know, and how do you respond in that moment? In that moment that somebody hits you up with a piece of disinformation. And I know for me, sometimes, you know, I'll hear some of this stuff and it's just, you know, just knocks me off my feet and I don't quite know how to react. So when you hear I heard statement, like in this case, I was out with friends, grabbing some beers, and one of my friends, she said, you know, I heard, you know, COVID is no worse than the flu, right? She said this not that long ago. She's like, I heard that COVID is no worse than the flu, right? And I mean, you know, my first instinct is one, to be upset, right? It's just like, I have been inside my house for a whole year and you're telling me you think it's no worse than the flu, right? So first there's all this emotions, and I just have to be able to recognize that, you know, you know, that I'm getting emotional, and I tell myself not to react, right? So because I know in this case, she wasn't talking just curiously. She was somebody who really didn't believe that COVID was real, and, you know, was looking more for a fight, right? She came out there without a mask on looking for a fight. So I was getting very emotional, which is what she wanted me to do. So I need to, in that moment, realize it's just like, I have to be in control of my emotions and not react, right? When someone pushes on you, your instinct is to push back. So the hard thing is to not act on that instinct, is to not push back and to create that space, open it up, create a space. Because what I really want her to do is to be informed, right? I want to help her out. She's my friend. I want to help her out. So in that moment, I want to create that space by not reacting, and instead just share my personal opinion or my personal story. Where am I at, right? She said where she's at. Well, I'll tell you where I'm at. And I know how the brain works. I know how she's going to process information that might not be something that she already believes. So I'm going to use a story. So in this case, I would say, you know, just she says, you know, I heard that COVID is no worse than flu, right? I control my emotions, and I said, you know, I went to Mile High Stadium for a Bronco game once. It was one of those days where it's like 50% off tickets, so the place was totally packed. And so I've been inside a stadium filled with people. So I can picture maybe like about half that stadium, or like the upper deck, right? I can picture that many people, and that's a ton of people. And that's about how many people die of the flu in the US every year. And that's a ton of people. But what I can't do is envision 500,000 people, because that's how many people died of COVID. That is over 6 Mile High stadiums. I can never even, with my eyes, be able to understand, you know, how many people that is. And then I just leave it right there, right? Told my story. I painted that picture, and yeah, you can just leave it at that. Didn't, you know, just can't push back on any facts or anything like that, because I really didn't pass on any, right? It was just from my personal story to saying, I cannot visualize that many people, and then change the subject. The big thing is to change the subject, to get to talking about something else, because you're in that fight mode, don't, right? She's my friend. I want to talk about something that we're actually friends about, right? So she said her piece, I said my piece. Now we're going to go talk about something else. So very important to always be changing the subject and getting back to us as people, connecting again as people. So real fast at the end here, just a little quick practical things for how to counter disinformation. First, I mentioned before that if you're online, anytime you click on anything at all, no matter what the click is, you are telling it that that is important. So any click is a vote for importance. So definitely stop before you click on anything. If you don't like something, don't retweet it. Because if you don't like it and you retweet it and you say something about you not liking it, the algorithm thinks you love it. They think it's you're saying it's great, and they're going to share it with more people. So if you don't like something, take a screenshot of it and post that, because that pulls it out of the algorithm. It's not telling it that you love it. So it pulls it out of the algorithm, but you are still being able to convey that you don't like something. So really just practical piece of information. Do not, same with that on Facebook. Don't share something that you don't like. Just take a picture of it and then post that. Also for social media, I mentioned stop. You see something that you don't like and you want to react, right? You see something that you hate and you want to react to it. Stop. Think before you click on anything. I always say leave it in the drafts. So if you're on Twitter or you have a way of just saying that, save it to my drafts, don't post this right now. So you can come back to it later when your emotions have come down a little bit. If you feel like you really have to say something, to like you see a piece of disinformation and you feel like you really have to counter it, if you really have to, you can put in a comment, with a link to, if you know something is not true and you can put in a source, you can drop that in there. But then the most important thing is to let it go, just to let it go. So you're not dealing with people, you're dealing with an algorithm. So just let it go. Another big thing is to help your friends. So again, you see your friends out there that are, let's say they're inadvertently sharing disinformation, definitely help them out with that. Make sure that they know to not be hit and share alike. Or if you see them that they're starting to believe some of this stuff, that's when you need to put your arm around them, be their friend and help them out. And then the best way to counter disinformation online and just anywhere in life is just to amplify the good stuff. Get the truth out there. You just want flood the zone with the good stuff. And then real fast, just to kind of review everything that we went over, is first thing, diversify your networks. If you feel this is for your coffee group or online. If you feel like you can say anything and no one's going to question or push back on anything you say, you are in a bubble or in an echo chamber. So make sure that you are diversifying your networks. Therefore, if you get people that are subject matter experts or have a different point of view, to kind of keep that nice balance for yourself. Again, check your sources. So AdFunds Media is great for that. Recognize disinformation. If you need more help on doing that, I recommend that spotthetroll.org. Again, help your friends. You now know how to do this stuff. Now pass it on. Again, keep in mind you're dealing with algorithms, not humans. So be mindful in how you interact with them. And then of course, just always get that really good stuff out there. So that's it for slides. I had a couple more questions. If you want to stick around and get to those, or we can open it up. Sally, what do you think?
How many questions do you have left?
2.
Oh yeah, let's answer those because they came in ahead of time.
Okay, cool. So, 1, 2. stop sharing. Am I stopping the share? All right, I'll just keep talking. Sorry if there's stuff on the screen, but I will just keep answer the questions. So the next question, actually there are two questions, but they're basically asking the same thing. This is not about disinformation, so I saved them for the end, but it's a little bit more in general. So what can you do to hold leaders accountable for what they say? Calling them out on it seems futile. And the next one along those same lines is, how do you hold elected officials accountable for their words and actions? Now I find it interesting that those are two separate questions and they use the exact same words. Hold them accountable. What does that mean? What does that mean? Let's talk about what we really want, right? Let's not, I hate that the phrase hold them accountable. That's not what we want. What you want to know is, how do you fire an elected official who sucks? They're bad. I don't like them. What you want to do, you want to be asking yourself, how do I get them out of office? How do I remove them from office? That's the real question. It's not a matter of holding them accountable. That's not a real term. That's not. So what you want to do, what you're saying is, I don't like this elected official. I don't want them to be representing me anymore. What can I do? Well, what you can do is organize, right? You need to get more people to not vote for them next time. So that's simple. So if you're talking about like in the moment, right now, if they hold any kind of any kind of way where you can speak directly to them, you want to go to them and you want to tell them what they said that was so wrong, why you don't like it. And it really helps if you can come up there and you can say, me and my 20 friends, we either, want you to disavow what you said, or we are going to organize and make sure that you don't have a job soon enough. So you want to organize, you want to get in their face. If you are dealing with a representative who does not meet with their people, I think in Colorado, we had a senator who lost his job largely because he never showed up to talk to people. So if you're dealing with somebody who never gives you those kind of opportunities, especially your bigger offices, like your senators and stuff like that, that could be harder to get to, then yeah, your recourse is organizing. But if you're talking smaller, more local, they often will have ways that you can meet with them directly and let them know. And if you can organize and go in there, not just as yourself, but you and a group of other people, that's gonna have a big impact. And it's kind of interesting how few people actually go to those kind of events where you can talk to your elected officials that are local. I mean, talk to anybody that's on a city council or something like that, and it's the same 5 people at every single meeting saying the same 5 things. So, and I know it's really hard to get out and go to those kind of events. So that's where organizing also helps. So maybe you can't yourself go to the event, but if you can get 20 people who believe the same things you do, you can take shifts. It's like, all right, maybe this month I'll be the one to go in there. So it takes organizing to get there and to get in their face and let them know that you disagree with them, and let them know that you're going to do something about it if they don't make a change. And if you're talking about Senate or something like that, and they're not doing those town halls and stuff like that, then it is a little bit harder than it is just about organizing, getting out there. And then the last question, very specific, geographically specific. I read the Weld County Republican Party newsletter on occasion, and they don't like it. They say it is vile. So can I write them nice letters? My advice is, when people disagree, when you disagree with somebody, the best thing that you can do is to get to know them and have those shared experiences as human beings, so you have a chance to be empathetic towards them, to understand where they're coming from, and they have a chance to understand you and where you're coming from. So the question was, can we write them nice letters? It's like letters aren't going to create that space of that, you know, the shared space to have those conversations and get them to really know you. You know, you can write if you write a letter sharing your story, a personal story, that's good. But it's even better if you are somehow able to create a space where you get to share, you know, have that exchange in person and just get to know them. They're people, right? We're all just people. So get to know each other as people, not just as, you know, our political opinions. Get to know them as people, build that empathy, and know that it takes a long time, right? So this isn't going to be an instantaneous thing. It's going to take a long time. And it's not about getting to the point where everyone agrees. That's boring. We're all different people. We're all going to have different opinions. The point is to get to the point where we can respect one another. We can see each other as human beings. We can, and then work together, live together. So if you can accomplish all that in a letter, great. But I really think you're going to need to just set up some way that you can regularly meet with people that have a different opinion than you as people. Find something you both enjoy, you know, both like doing, and yeah, just make it a regular thing, and to the point that, yeah, you become friends and you start seeing each other as people.
Thank you so much, Kaz. This was really informative.
Sorry it went so long. There were a lot of great questions, so I wanted to get to all of them.
Well, this is something that, you know, we knew was not going to be covered in an hour. You know, this is just the beginning conversation to moving forward on how to counter this. You know, and so I think it went really well tonight. I hope people found value in this tonight. And if you do have questions, feel free to email me, and I will get your questions answered by the appropriate people. And you know, as I said earlier, I am looking into this more with other resources as well. And you know, Kaz and I have definitely talked about that. Again, that's how we met. And I may be having other events with other focuses in regards to the same issue. So I just think that the more we can learn and inform ourselves, the more we can have these difficult conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with us, and just really start these conversations where we respect each other and we get back to what politics is all about: respectful discourse and solving problems together, right? So thank you so much for all of you being here, and sorry it ran long, and I hope you have a great Friday night. Thanks.
Thank you.